Hey everyone, welcome back to the Intelligent Conversations podcast. Today I have the honor to learn from Dennis Mellen. Dennis has experience in the airline, military, and consulting industries. He is the author of Takes More Than Heart, which has the theme of changing challenges into opportunities. So Dennis, thank you for coming on today. I appreciate you taking the time to come on my show today. I'm excited to learn from you.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Josh. It's always great to get on and have a conversation with somebody halfway across the United States.
Oh,
right?
It's a blast. I always love talking with people all over the world. It's fascinating. I learn so many new things. But kind of to start out, this just kind of get an idea of who you are. It's what got you started. I believe it's a pilot that you started with. What kind of was the initial draw to that job right there?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Back when I was about 10 years old, I was out at my father's Air Force base at the end of a runway when this F-4 Phantom comes screaming by in full afterburner where you can feel it in your chest. I'm sure you've been to air shows and felt that. And I'm turning to my dad and I'm pumping my fist going, yeah, Dad, that's what I want to do when I grow up. Of course, my wife says, I haven't reached that point yet. So So from there, it was kind of a singleness and purpose. I thought, what would be the best way to become a professional pilot and possibly remain in the Air Force? And so I went through the application process and went to the Air Force Academy, Air Force pilot training. And about the 6-year point in the Air Force, I thought, I can continue flying the same airplane in the Air Force Reserves and look for an airline job. And I got hired by Alaska Airlines. And from there, both careers went a little bit different directions. About 1996, I retired from the Air Force as a lieutenant colonel, and from Alaska Airlines back in about 2012. So
Alaska Airlines, so did you? I don't really know my airlines. I'll be honest. They're based out of Alaska, right? So did you?
No, they're actually based out of Seattle. There is a base up in Anchorage, and there's a base in San Francisco and Los Angeles and Portland. But they fly all over the United States. They're the 5th largest carrier.
Oh, wow.
It's just that people just don't associate with it like they do the top 4.
That's crazy. So what were some of the routes you had, like some of the main places you'd fly between?
Well, everywhere from the Bahamas to one of the Aleutian chain islands of Adak. I mean, with Alaska now, I went worldwide with the Air Force. So.
Oh, that's cool. What would you say is your favorite place that you've traveled to then?
Well, I always liked the long layovers. So anywhere that had a sun and some beach, because Seattle's not exactly known for sun. Had sun and a beach I enjoyed the most. In the Air Force, it was just there are some pretty weird places we went into. There's an island in the middle of the Indian Ocean that is a British-held island. It's called Diego Garcia. That I spent 45 days on one time. It's like I was gonna. I don't know if you're familiar with the old show Gilligan's Island, but it's a show where they're stranded on an island in the middle of nowhere. Well, that's exactly. I mean, it's 5 or 6 hours to any landmass from there. So
wow,
it's in the middle of nowhere. It's right on the equator, right smack in the middle of the Indian Ocean. So
that's crazy. Do you get like that when you had that experience, kind of that island fever kind of? Yeah, I've seen most of the island, and I remember when I went to Hawaii, I kind of experienced that a little bit towards the end. It was like, oh man.
Yeah, it's a small atoll that's in a V shape that has a lagoon in it and everything. And once you've seen, it's not even a half mile across, just enough to put a runway and a ramp area. But it's a strategic place. For the military, right there in the middle, it helps with reinforcing anything that happens in the Middle East, and It's remote. I will say that.
Wow, that's awesome. So, kind of tell me, how did you transition then, like out of the Air Force and being an airline pilot to now you've written a book, and it's called, correct me if I'm wrong, takes more than heart.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a story about back in 2008. I started getting really deeply into mountain bike riding. And one of the days, the trails out east of Seattle in the foothills of the Cascades are some of the nicest trails around. Hiking, biking, anything that you wanted to do as far as being out in the wilderness or outdoors. I picked out a trail one day that was listed in the trail guide as IAB. It's we can imagine what that B word stands for. It's like a 500-foot climb within a mile, and I didn't make it up to the top. That's where I had a heart attack, and from there, it got to be where I couldn't fly anymore. I mean, that was really a crushing, overwhelming. I mean, it took months and some counseling to get back to where I could contemplate what is Dennis Mellen 2.0 is going to look like, But from there, it took about 10 years to right when COVID hit, I thought, well, maybe it's time to write the book. So I wrote the book, Takes More Than Heart. That's changing your challenges into opportunities, which
I love that.
That's been my philosophy. Look for whatever you can. Look for whatever opportunity it presents itself there.
I think right on. That's kind of what initially drew me to have you on the show. It's that phrase right there, changing challenges into opportunities. I think a lot of people need that. And especially, let's say, if a lot of people are encountering some challenges, I would say everyone encounters challenges. And I guess kind of the question I have here is, how do you turn them into opportunities? Because I feel like some people, they get in that scenario where it's like, oh, that's just challenges, it's life, just push through it, right? But how do we actually change them into opportunities?
Well, I think it goes back to creating that growth mindset with you. It's one of those things of trying to stay positive, even though there's negative things happen. Navy SEALs have an acronym they use, DWI, not exactly driving while intoxicated, but rather like, we're surrounded by the enemy, running out of ammunition. Deal with it, because the alternative is going to get killed or captured. Well, if you bring that philosophy into your life, every time something comes up, it's an opportunity for you to grow. The old Japanese samurai saying or ninjas, I'm not sure who it is. Maybe it's just adage they use, but it's fall down 7 times, get up 8. And you just keep plugging away. Every failure is bringing you closer to your next success. So if you adopt that philosophy, you're finding opportunities out of all those challenges that come to you. Yeah.
And something I like to think too is that the challenges are also a great kind of along that growth mindset. It's a great opportunity to learn and, grow, because
exactly.
I mean, yes, you can learn from your successes and you're like, oh man, I did a lot of good things. Like, let's keep doing that.
Yeah.
But it's really when you fail and you struggle and you counter those challenges, you're like, hey, maybe I should stop doing this, or hey, maybe I should change something because I'm miserable right now.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, let's change something. And I think a lot of people, they fall into that trap of just, oh, well, this is just how life is. And, we just deal with the punches, when it's like, no, you could actually improve off these challenges. There are opportunities that you can grow. So how was it like writing the book, man? Like I've heard from enough people that it is a challenge. Man. So how was that for you?
Well, it was a challenge, and I did it a second time, and I'm starting a third time. The hardest part is finding the time where you kind of get into that flow. And there were times, especially when we were all having to stay home, where I'd get an idea, and instead of waiting until the next morning to start it, I just get up and I did some of my best writing between like 10 at night and 3 in the morning. You'd be typing away, and all of a sudden, holy crap, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, but that I thought was going to be the hardest part. The actual hard part is trying to market it and sell it. There's a lot that goes into that, and trying to find a publisher and find an editor and find somebody to help you with the marketing. It was all foreign to me, so the learning curve was steep. So yeah, I adopted find the opportunity out of every one of those obstacles. I think I know a lot more than I did jumping in there. It's been a fun process though.
That's cool. So what else is kind of in that book besides, I mean, we kind of touched on the essential theme, but is there something in there that you think people can really benefit from?
The first few chapters basically describe the time leading up to and the occurrence of the heart attack. From there, I go into some of the things that I attempted to do to come out of to reinvent Dennis Mellen. I went through a process of I was 56 at the time. It's not like you want to you're just going to roll over and move to the Barker Lounger with a cool drink and a remote, and I call that Geezerville. I still felt I had something to contribute, but at the same time, I'm 56. Who's going to bring me on? I went through the revolving door of applications through LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor, looking for another aviation job, and I settled upon a series of 3 or 4. And they were exciting, but they didn't capture that same excitement of being a pilot. And after all, I'd been doing it for 35, 40 years. How do you change how you if you love something so much? It felt like a spouse had died or a close relative had died. It's like, now what? So I described how that process went, and then I finally settled upon. One of my friends that's a lady came up to me, and she said, "Dennis, how'd you like to talk to our group?" And I kind of laughed. I said, "About what?" And she said, "Well, you've gone to all these Air Force leadership schools. You've been in charge of 650 pilots and 40 instructors. You could talk about leadership." And it was like the sky opened up and this bright ray of sunshine fell down upon me, and I was going, yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, I could do that. I started getting a smile. I started getting excited about it again. So from that point, it was kind of developing the business of speaking and talking, and I got checked out as a John Gordon Power Positive Leadership trainer, and I started doing some consulting, helping new and emerging or established leaders just get better. Because if you've got a growth mindset, your leadership, I like to say, is working perfectly right now for the results you're getting. If you don't like those results, the first thing to look at is yourself. How is your leadership working? How do I improve that? And it's a constantly changing, evolving thing. There's always something new that crops up, and hey, there's a thought. Here's how I need to change my leadership style, or here's what I need to do to get better.
Exactly. And I think there's also, like, kind of what you were alluding to, a variety of leadership styles, right? There's no one set of leader that's like, this is what a leader is. It's like, we can go through history and it's like, oh, this was a leader. Oh, but this guy was a leader. He wasn't even in this industry, right? And when we look at those examples, we realize, oh, hey, like, I can become my own style of leadership, and we can learn from those guys, right? We want to learn from people that have come before us, but also kind of add your own little twist to it. Like, how do you lead? And I think that's a very important part of it.
Plus, it's important to realize that in a given situation, you need to change your leadership style. It does, maybe you're working with somebody that telling them exactly what to do just causes them to revolt inside, but maybe if you nurture them and say, hey, Josh, what do you need to be successful at what you're doing right now? Instead of do this, and this, maybe that's the style that you need to work with a particular person or a particular situation. If we're charging a machine gun nest, I'm going to say, Josh, you go this way, and I expect you to jump up and do that. But if we're building a plan or a project, then I've got to rely. I'm not going to bring the talents that a Josh brings into the team. How do I bring that out? The genius is in the room when you talk working with teams or working with your department or your company. The leadership is or the talent is in the room. It's not you. And too many leaders think, "Oh, I'm at that point. Everything comes from me."
Exactly. And I think a lot of people, like kind of the trap you were saying there, they get stuck in this mindset of, oh, it has to come from me. And, oh man, there was a good quote that I can't remember who it's from. But they said, nothing great was built by one person. It's always a group of people. It's just, usually there's either a spokesman or, right, there's a head that's kind of managing the leader, right, that's saying, and that's where they usually are the ones that end up with the credit. And it's like, no, it took a team to build some of these big companies, great moments in history. Usually there was a team behind it. And I think most people kind of forget that. It's like, yeah, you need a team to build something great. And I think a lot of people miss that. And it's hard though, right? You want to kind of that control, but sometimes in order to be a good leader, you have to let go of that control, which it's kind of nerve-wracking. So how would you say, would you help leaders kind of let go of that control and let others bring out the best in them?
Well, yeah, a lot of these leadership concepts depend on how much time you have. Well, we talked about a machine gun nest. That needs immediate attention. But something that's long-term, you've got to build a culture where people can hold those positive, purposeful, productive conversations that without fear of retribution or shame, where innovation comes in, new ideas, ways of looking at things. Your valuable input needs to be considered, and we have the whole gamut of people in teams. We've got the extroverts to the introverts, and it's incumbent upon the leader to bring out the best in everybody. If they bring out the best on the team, then the whole team's going to be successful. It's a we over me concept. Now somebody has to lead. Somebody has to make the final call. There might be two options here, and it could get down to basically a coin toss, or based on all your experience and your judgment. But the important thing is getting that input from everybody.
Yes.
Otherwise, everybody's sitting around waiting for directions from you. They're waiting for you to digest all the inputs and come up with a decision.
Exactly.
Whereas the other way, it's collaborative, and you're getting inputs from everybody, and there's 1,000 ways of doing something right. Some of them are better than others. There's only 4 or 5 usually that are wrong. So taking a new idea and developing that, helping people have input, so that's what gets people excited about coming to work. I get to come to work instead of I have to go to work. That's a concept that's really important for a leader to draw out of his people.
I agree. I think, especially I see a lot now where it's people, they want, right, they're like, oh, I want the job, like just give me a job and I'm here to work. And they want to be told what to do. I'm like, no, you can do so much more. And life's more enjoyable when you're actually contributing something, right? Because I'm sure you've seen this too, where when you actually do something, like contribute, even if it's something like very small, then you see it implemented somewhere, and then you see it and it's like, oh my gosh, like I helped with that. Kind of brings a little bit of satisfaction of, hey, like I helped build like that right there. I can see it. And if you come in with that attitude of, oh, I'm just here for the job and, punch in, punch out, it's not that beneficial.
I'm collective. There's a story It's a true story. London burned down back in 1666, something like that. And there was an architect named Christopher Wren that was brought in to rebuild St. Patrick's Cathedral. I think that's it. And anyway, one of the days he went out to see what was going on at the job site, and he went up to the first guy and said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm building a wall." He goes up to the second guy and said, "What are you doing?" "I'm collecting a paycheck to feed my family." And he goes up to the third guy and says, "What are you doing?" The guy drops everything, gets a big smile on his face and says, "I'm building a cathedral that is going to house 800 parishioners on Sunday and be a refuge for the homeless during the week. That's what I'm doing." He had purpose, so he was excited about it. So the key with a leader is, how do we get those cathedral builders? How do we get them, draw that out of the people? And that's given everybody on your team, your company, a purpose. Here's what we do, and this is why we do it, and here's how you fit into that.
I think that's cool. And especially that last part, I think leaders may oftentimes just need to help people recognize, like, hey, this is your part in this. Like, yeah, it may seem like a very small part, but without you contributing to this small part, nothing's happening, right? And making them feel like, hey, like, you're valuable to making this happen. And do you believe that this is actually a good thing we should do? And if you ask that question, I think leaders are more, they ask questions rather than demands, right? It's like, hey, what do you think about this? What are you contributing, or what? Like, ask great questions. And I think that all of a sudden they have to start thinking about, like, hey, wait, why am I here? Like, why am I, what am I doing? And also it forces them to ask some important questions themselves and come to the realization of, hey, this is why I'm doing it, or I'm going to come to my job with more drive, more motivation, whatever it may be, to produce the best outcome.
I'm not sure. I can't remember offhand who wrote it. It might have been John Maxwell, Simon Sinek, or Jack Canfield. But there's a book out, and it's called "Great Leaders Ask Great Questions," and that's exactly what you're describing there. So, you need to be somebody that asks questions and then sit back and listen, rather than be the constantly the autocratic leader where, hey, do this, do that, micromanage and things like that,
And it can be exhausting when you're doing that too. It's not something where, like, it's not fun for the person that's getting micromanaged, right? Because they always feel like someone's on their back, like, hey, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you, right? But it's also stressful on you, because now it's like, I could be doing a lot better things, right? I have other people maybe that I need to be managing right now. And I'm too busy, like, spending most of my time worrying about what the heck you're doing. It's like, it's just not, it doesn't help anyone. And I think, I like your point. I think that's very, very important that we ask good questions. And yeah, so this is another thing that kind of, I guess you could say, comes up, but the difficult decisions. Leaders hate making those, I would say. I mean, I don't know, but everyone encounters some of those difficult choices. Like, let's say room split 50-50 on a call you need to make, and you need to make that tough call. What's your advice for that?
Well, you've taken all the input. Hopefully, you've asked great questions, hopefully, and you still have a little bit of time to make that decision. And like I said earlier, there's probably 1,000 ways of doing something right and only 3 or 4 of doing it wrong. I think there comes a point where you make the decision, and this is the direction we're going to go. And if a roadblock comes up, it's just like driving to Disneyland or Disney World. There's all kinds of ways of getting there. There may be traffic, there may be weather, but eventually, you'll find a route that eventually gets there. It may take longer than you wanted, and it may cost a few extra nights of hotels or something like that, but you're still plugging away, trying to reach that goal. I like to think of it as you're driving in your car at night. Your headlights only go 200 feet. You have a destination, but you have to take care of that 200 feet, and then the next 200 feet, and the next 200 feet, till you finally get to your goal. So take care of what's in front of you, work on what's important now, and just keep the goal in mind. Okay, we may get sidetracked, we may break down for a while, but we're still plugging away trying to get to that goal. We're trying to get to Disneyland or Disney World, right?
Yes, and that is the happiest place on earth. So,
yeah, that's why I use that. I'm glad you said that.
And I think that analogy is great. I think there's that vision we all have for ourselves, right? Like we're like, hey, this is where I see myself 5, 10, 20 years. Some people don't, but I think everyone has a general idea of like, hey, this is the better version of myself that I want. And honestly, taking that 200 feet in front of you outlook and saying, all right, what can I do now so then I keep moving forward? That's going to get you closer to where you want to be than, oh, I need to get to Disneyland. Let's just teleport there or something. That's just not how it happens. Success is not built overnight. It's not. And especially now with like social media constantly barraging us, we like to think that, oh, success is some guy pops up and it's like, oh, he's successful. And I'm like, yeah, but you didn't see the 20 years that guy put in behind that. He was like working nights, that he was at one point he thought he was going to go bankrupt. Some point there's so many challenges that guy encountered and he overcame them. He turned them into opportunities. And I think that's how like sustainable, I should say, success is.
It's one of those things of we alluded to it earlier. Falling down 7 times, getting up 8. Just keep moving forward. Deal with this moment, but keep your goal in mind.
Mm-hmm. I think having it in that back of your head, like it's still there. Like, hey, this is what I see for myself. But then focusing, like having that focus on what now is, that's what's going to help you in the long run.
Well, and it's important not to get frozen and being indecisive or not begin. The hardest step in any journey is the first one. I like to use an analogy like when you were younger, the first time you went bowling, somebody probably said, hey, let's put the gutter bumpers up, mm-hmm. right? And you were probably saying, I don't need those gutter bumpers. And sure enough, you roll your first ball and it bangs off the side 3 or 4 times, and maybe you get 1 or 2 pins. But as you got better, it bounced off the side less and got more pins, and eventually you dropped those gutter bumpers and maybe became a good bowler. But the key on it is, if you never rolled your ball to begin with, you would never get any pins.
Exactly.
So the learning process is there, but you've got to begin somewhere. You've got to roll your ball.
Exactly.
And not be afraid to roll your ball.
Yeah, I think that's important, that we got to be willing to take that first step. I think that's important. So kind of on that point, I'm going to use this as the intelligent question of the day. How would you, I guess, help others overcome that fear? I think, right, that's ultimately what it is. It's that fear of, oh crap, I could fail, or oh, I could miss all the pins, right? I don't get anything. How would you help them overcome that fear of failure?
Yeah, I don't remember who said this either. I have a lot of things that I attribute to different people, but one of the things is you keep your goal in mind. And everybody has fear, and everybody has anxiety, and everybody has regrets. The regrets are for things that have happened, but just like in baseball, once it's in the scorebook, it doesn't get changed. And you can fear the future, or you can have hope. But if it hasn't happened yet, why would you pick fear? So why not be hopeful? I can work this out. There's a solution. Who do I need to help me out here? And that's a hard question too. Is a lot of times people are reluctant to ask for help, but it's one step at a time. Take care of one step at a time, and learn from the failures. I think if you actually look at people that are successful, you're going to find a lot of failures in their lives too. But they didn't let that freeze them or prevent them from moving on. So it's important to just keep moving forward, taking care of this moment with your goal in mind. That's the philosophy of how to be successful. There's thousands of stories out there where people start out as minor jobs, pumping gas, working as a cashier, but they kept moving forward. And eventually, maybe they stayed in the same company, became managers, store manager, regional manager and eventually president, or the whole thing about being a pilot in the Air Force. It takes one step at a time. You have to learn. You didn't automatically become the ace of the base. It took probably 10 years for you to develop into a professional ace of the base, I guess is what you'd call it, or same thing in an airline. You don't just jump in and start flying in the left seat of a 747 or an Airbus. It takes a while, and you have to pay your dues, and you're going to have to make your mistakes and recover from them. And hopefully you haven't caused any traffic accidents.
Yeah, hopefully not. Wow, that's the intelligent answer of the day. I think so much to digest there. I think that you hit it right on the nail, and I especially like the point you made on hope. I think the only way to combat fear is hope. Like, you have to hope that there's something better, right? And if you don't have that hope, fear will win.
You get frozen in time.
Exactly.
My wife's got friends that have been nurses. My wife's a registered nurse. Been a nurse at the same hospital for over 35 years, doing the same job for the last 20 years. And it's basically, she's helping out people, which is what excites her. But at the same time, where are you growing?
Exactly.
What are you changing? What are you experiencing? What's making you better?
The world has so much more to offer.
Yeah.
There's so many opportunities that are out there for you to learn and grow. And that's the thing, you can stay in that field, but just, hey, let's check out what this job is and learn a little bit more. And that might even help you perform better at your other job, I think.
Well, that's how you develop leaders. You give them experiences. You find somebody that wants to move forward. Josh wants to be, in the C-suite for Microsoft. Well, how do we get there? What are the steps along the way? Again, it's taking care of the next 200 feet while you're driving, right? Mm-hmm. What's the next thing? What do I need for experience? Where do I get marketing or sales or technology or human resources? Where do I get that experience to be that overall leader in your team, your group, your company? I
agree. Yeah. Well, you hit it right on the nail, and I think that's a great way you tied it in a bow nicely. That was amazing. So, Dennis, thank you for coming on, but you mentioned your book, Takes More Than Heart. Where can people find that, and where can, if they want to reach out to you, where can they find you, all that fun stuff?
Okay, well, where the book is available, you can get it on Amazon.
Sweet.
Just look for Dennis Mellen. You can see the spelling in the lower left down there. It's also available through my book website, takesmorethanheart.com. The leadership side of it is full throttle leadership, powering teams for peak performance. And if you just go to fullthrottleLeadership.com, there's an area where you can ask questions, set up a time where we can talk about how I can help your team get to that elite performance level that we're looking for. And in the discussion, we'll talk about gaps in your leadership and how we can fill those, and maybe even discover how it looked for you and I to work together, making you a better leader. So takesmorethanheart.com or fullthrottleLeadership.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dennis, for coming on today. I appreciate you. I learned a lot. I know that. I'm sure the audience learned a lot as well, so thank you.
No, I appreciate the conversation. It was very engaging. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. So everyone, as you can tell, that is Dennis Mellen. He's a very intelligent person, has great things to say. I challenge you guys, if anything piqued your interest today, to go check out his websites. He dropped the information there for you guys to go find him. Stay tuned till next week. We have a great guest lined up for you guys. See you guys next week, and let's get after it. Hey everyone, if you liked this episode and would like to hear more, be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button. We release a new episode every Wednesday for you guys to listen to. Thank you guys so much for the support that you give. We could not have done this without you guys. If you would like to be a potential guest on the show, check out intelligentconvos.com and fill out the form there. Thank you guys again, and let's get after it.